The lifter serial number, the main one, is located here at the bottom back of the lifter. It's on the RonI sticker there. That serial number is the main lifter serial number and will tell us everything about the lifter. There are other options of other serial numbers that you can provide if that sticker for some reason has been lost. This sticker for the intermediate section is normally underneath the intermediate, but is located on the new lifters here. So on older lifters, you'll find it up underneath the intermediate. The other options you have is on the lift mast. The lift mast serial number is located here, or the power pack serial number, which is located on the back side of the power pack. Any of these serial numbers are also able to be cross-referenced to determine what lifter you have.
When you email spareparts@roni.com, you will reach the spare part manager. When requested, she can put together a document which details the specific spare parts that pertain to your exact lifter. You will receive images, part numbers, descriptions, quantities, and prices. You might also receive a one-page document such as this one showing pricing of a specific item.
The hand pendant, which controls up and down motion. This would just come out of the handle holder that's on your handlebar. It's unplugged from the back of the power pack here. And then for replacing it, same procedure. Removal and replacement of the battery set. The batteries are the same. They're two 12-volt batteries. And we will show the disconnection here. The batteries are delivered. That has a hex head screw on it that's also a Phillips head. And the spare batteries are the batteries only, so all the hardware and wires will have to be kept for the next set. That releases the batteries. They can then be pulled out, which is done a little bit easier if the power pack is sitting up. The batteries just slide out. So this would be a spare set of batteries. We'll now show insertion back into the power pack. Inserting the batteries is done easier with the power pack sitting down. Please note the orientation of the leads. So the terminals are always to the outside of the power pack with the positive on the right. And make sure you don't catch any wires when putting the batteries back in. The negative terminal is put to the left battery negative terminal. The center location, you join the positive from the left battery to the negative of the right battery. And then the positive power comes out of the right terminal of the right battery, and that feeds the power to the Curtis card and the auxiliary output. These casters are freewheeling directional lock and brake, so when removing them, it is important to set them in a place so that the next caster can be put on in the same orientation. So what we do is you'll have the lifter, go ahead and brake the wheels. So this puts them in the locked position. And then we've actually removed the power pack, which removes some of the weight from tilting over. You tilt over the lifter. We have a small stand we use. This can be done on a bench if needed. That will support the lifter. And then the next step that will be done is there's 8 bolts that holds the leg to the intermediate frame. Those will be removed in order to release the leg so that the caster can be removed. This requires a 5mm Allen wrench to remove the bolt. And this will allow the leg to be removed from the lifter. So the spare caster has to be prepared in the same manner. And as we brake the wheel in the lock position, the caster needs to be in the same orientation, and the brake has to be engaged on the replacement caster, so now it's locked. What's important is that this caster stays in this orientation so that the hole that the brake rod goes into stays in the same pattern as the leg. We'll now go ahead and remove the old caster by removing 2 M8 bolts. These are, again, 5mm Allen wrenches to remove those. The new caster, keeping the orientation the same way, is inserted into the leg post, and it keeps the brake engagement lined up with the open hole in the leg. All right, so when putting these in, starting by hand, this avoids cross-threading of the threads and the one on the back. And then either with the hand wrench or a torque, it can be put back in. The leg is now ready to be put back on the lifter. To do this, you want to make sure the brake rod is back in the braked orientation, which is this position. You insert the new leg so the brake rod falls in. And then with these bolts, it's the same thing. These need to be hand started as these are going into an aluminum extrusion. And these bolts, before standing up the lifter, just run lightly against the leg, and the final tightening will be done after the lifter is stood up. Now we stand up the lifter, and this allows to make sure that the leg, first, that the casters work in the proper manner, but also so the legs will be level. To do the rest of the repairs inside the power pack will need to be removed from the lifter. So put the brake on the lifter. We'll go ahead and remove the hand control. Disconnect the power to the motor. Disconnect any auxiliary cables, which would be the light. Loosen the knob on the power pack. Slide the bracket up and pull the power pack off the lifter. If you have a cart or table, you would put the power pack down on that. So to access the controls that are inside the power pack, there's 8 Phillips head screws, 4 on the bottom, 4 on the top that need to be removed. That'll allow you access inside. One note, when opening the cover, just remember there are connected wires to the switch and the battery gauge, so you do just want to fold it down. The item we're going to replace is the interface card, but before doing that, if you disconnect the Molex connector that goes to the battery indicator, it'll allow you to move the battery cover off to the side, just giving you more access. All right, so the first item we're going to replace is the interface board. The first thing to do is to remove the Molex connector that connects it to the control card. There's a tab and it pulls out, and then there's 3 Phillips head screws that will need to be removed. And please note there's also serrated washers that go with those screws that need to be used when you reinstall. So for replacing the card, you would reverse the operation. Place the card with the hand pendant plug-in matches up with the hole. Be sure all the wires are clear of the card. the small white connector is placed back on the board on the area that's labeled P1. It is directional, so it can only be inserted one way. And then reattaching the Molex connector, which is also can only be put on one way. Now we're going to remove and replace the Curtis controller. That's the controller that sits inside the power pack. This is how the spare will arrive. It'll have 4 leads coming off of it, and they will all have splice connectors on them, because when this card is replaced in the field, the wires will need to be cut and rejoined to these. We're going to walk you through this to show the removal. To access this card, there's screws on the back, so the power pack needs to be in the upright position. It requires a 7mm socket that hits the lock nut inside, and then it's just a Phillips screw that's behind the power pack. And again, you will need the hardware for the replacement. So that card can now be pulled out and removed. You'll see the 2 screws are still sitting inside the power pack. At that point, you would have to cut the red wire and the white wire on this side, and the 2 output wires here, which are the red and the black wire, and those would correspond to the wires on the controller. After that's done, you would put the splice joints in, crimp them, and then the new card would be ready to be replaced. Again, you need to make sure all the wires are clear and not pinched underneath. There's a couple wire sets that run behind the card. He's just disconnected the connection to the interface board to give a clearer picture. So that is, now the card's back onto the screws, and if we go around to the back of the power pack, you'll see the screws that we're accessing. And then we'll just re-secure it with the nuts. The best is to put it on its back. Again, connect the battery meter indicator. This is a one-way connection as well. And then the most important thing when putting the cover on is that you avoid pinching any of the wires between the cover. So just make sure they're all down. Slide it over, and then you'll have the 8 screws to replace. 4 on top, 4 across there, and then there's 4 on the bottom.